Hello and welcome to The Epidemic. My name, like always, is Narb, and last week I had promised to make a more informational type of Forge Talk, and here it is. This topic is especially relevant because of the recent edition of Big Team Battle. A few of the maps that were included were recreations of old maps in different games. Now, for most people, when they have the idea to remake an old map in a future game, they don't really consider some of the new game mechanics that might have an impact on the gameplay. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Map scaling and whether or not it should ever be accounted for. This is a subject that has recently gone through some debate and a clear answer hasn't really been made. But regardless, we're going to try and break it down and see what we can't discover. Scaling, for those who don't know, is essentially the dimensions of your map. Pretty much how big or small it is, in more simple terms. The size of your map will determine how long or quick it will take for players to move around, which is pretty important to understand. Having a map that is too big will make it more difficult for you to find your enemies, and if your map is too small, then you'll run into your enemies too often. You need to figure out what the map is being made for first, and then build based around whatever that's going to be. So why are we talking about it now? Well, there's been this question of whether or not forgers or developers should increase map sizes to compensate for new combat mechanics, mainly sprint. So some people would argue that if 343 wanted to bring back Guardian, they should make the new map a little bit bigger to balance itself with sprint. And then the other side would say, no, there actually isn't any need to change anything at all. So which side is right? Well, let's look at each position a little bit more. In general, I would agree that there is almost no need to increase map size to compensate for sprint. The reasoning for that is because players should not feel the need to sprint to every destination on a map. When you sprint, you're putting yourself at a combat disadvantage, and if you happen to run into an enemy who is not sprinting, they will be able to shoot you first. There is a slight delay when you try to position your reticle after sprinting, and that delay is enough to affect the outcome of that encounter, and to a point, also affects the gameplay as well. Most players just naturally feel the need to sprint, so that's why most people would disagree with this statement. But ultimately, it's about the pacing of a game. The map should enforce you to pace yourself and not just randomly sprint wherever you want to. And that is pretty much the main idea of this argument. Now, the other side would obviously disagree with this. These people would normally just say that it is important to upscale because sprint is now just so dominant in the current meta. It's just something that players do, and if the map isn't built around that, then it's the creator's fault for designing it incorrectly. So if an old map from Halo 3 is thrown into Halo 5 matchmaking, it won't play nearly as good as it did in the past unless it goes through some changes. If you play those old maps with Halo 5's current combat system, you could really abuse the map. The way structure and cover is placed no longer accounts for that game's movement speed. So now with the new mechanics, you can move from place to place without taking any serious type of damage. And because of that, players aren't as prone to punishment for making stupid choices. With all that being said, here's what I think. Most of the time, you should not increase the scale of a map to accommodate for sprint. Maps should be able to enforce a specific type of playstyle that is relevant to the current meta. However, that doesn't mean you should leave an old map completely unaltered. I think that cover spacing is very important to look into. Too much old cover can turn encounters into chasing because of all the tight corners and limited visibility that the old maps might have. It is now much easier to escape fights because of all of Halo 5's new Spartan abilities, along with the new damage settings and weapon range as well. You may not need to increase the map size, but it is crucial to understand the timing and pacing and cover and jump spacing and anything that might have an effect to the overall movement and how much it can punish the gameplay of your map. Does all that make sense? I hope so. I guess overall you just really need to predict how leaving certain things alone and changing things will affect the way a map plays. But that's pretty much all I had planned to talk about. I want to give a huge shout out to my good friend Blaze for introducing this topic to me and just discussing some of the more hidden details about map scaling. He's one of the best designers out there, so be sure to look out for him in the community. Also, thanks to all the other forgers who voiced their opinions about this over on the forums. It was interesting to hear a more general voice rather than just my own. And speaking of other voices, let me know what you guys think about this week's topic down in the comments below. I always love hearing what you guys have to say, so thanks to all of you who participate. I think this series is going really well, and I'm excited to keep doing it when Forge finally comes out. But hey, again guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the near future.